My wife and I fought over $250, $0 in inheritance, but I just found out she's been secretly embezzling from our joint account to fund her affair with my best friend. Now she's suing me for half the house I paid for and claiming I'm the cheater. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, pouring out the worst betrayal of my life, but here I am. It all started so innocently, just a quiet, normal marriage with my wife, Lisa. We'd been together for about 7 years, built a life, bought a house, and managed to keep the peace most of the time. But behind the calm facade, I started noticing little things that didn't add up. Small signs, really. Missing money here and there, strange phone calls, her becoming more secretive about her phone. I brushed it off at first, telling myself she was just stressed or maybe had a new hobby I didn't know about. Then came the fight over the inheritance. My family left me a sizable amount, 250, and Lisa suddenly acted like I was hiding something. She kept pushing me to put the money into joint accounts, insisting it was our future. But I had this gut feeling she was just waiting for her chance. I was cautious, but I trusted her, or at least I wanted to. Still, I started to feel uneasy. She'd get defensive if I asked about the money, and her excuses didn't sit right with me. She said I was paranoid, that I didn't trust her. That was the first crack in the foundation, but I didn't know how deep it would go. One night I was working late at the office, and I decided to check our bank account from my phone, something I'd never done before. I figured I'd just look at the recent transactions, nothing more. That's when I saw it. A series of transfers from our joint account to an unknown account, small amounts at first, then larger sums, all with strange descriptions. I recognized the account number. It belonged to a guy I'd seen Lisa with a few times, a guy named Mark. My heart started pounding as I realized what I was looking at. She'd been secretly embezzling money, probably funding some affair with Mark, and I had no idea. The shock hit me like a punch in the gut. I felt sick. All those nights I thought, she was just tired or busy with work. She was secretly stealing from us. And worse, I suspected she was using that money to pay for her affair. My mind spun with questions. How long had she been doing this? How much had she taken? Was she lying about everything else? The betrayal cut deep, and I couldn't believe I missed all the signs. The woman I trusted, the woman I loved, was secretly screwing me over, and I'd been blind to it all. I spent the following days trying to process what I'd found. I confronted her that night just as I was starting to put the pieces together. I told her I knew about the money, about the transfers, and her reaction was pure chaos. She everything at first, calling me paranoid and accusing me of planting evidence. She screamed that I was crazy, that I was making things up because I was jealous or insecure. She spun this web of lies, saying she was just helping a friend out, that Mark was just a business associate, and that I was overreacting. But I knew better. I had seen her sneaking around, heard her whispering on the phone late at night, and now this evidence was undeniable. The thing is, Lisa is a master manipulator. She's bitchy when cornered, refuses to admit fault, and can lie with such ease it's almost impressive. She's always been good at twisting things, making herself the victim and turning the tables when it suits her. That night, she looked me dead in the eyes and told me I was crazy, that I was overthinking everything, that I was just jealous of her friendship with Mark. But I wasn't stupid. I knew she was lying, and I knew the real reason she was so defensive. She knew I'd caught her. The emotional fallout was immediate. I went from feeling betrayed to furious, then to deeply hurt. I trusted her with everything, our marriage, our future, my love, and she'd been secretly siphoning money and cheating on me. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about money or an affair. It was about a fundamental breach of trust that I didn't think could ever be repaired. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach, and the rage I felt was overwhelming. I wanted to scream, to break something, but I knew I had to keep my composure. Still inside, I was boiling. How could she do this? How could she lie so effortlessly? In the days that followed, I started digging deeper. I pulled bank statements, looked into her phone, and even hired a private investigator. Every little thing pointed to her deception. The more I uncovered, the more I realized her schemes went far beyond just the money. She'd been planning this for months, maybe years. The betrayal wasn't just financial, it was emotional, personal. I kept asking myself how I hadn't seen it coming, how I'd been such a fool to trust her completely. Every moment I spent with her after that felt like a lie, like I was living with a stranger. Then came the legal mess. She started claiming I was the one cheating, trying to turn the tables around and make me look like the bad guy. She's now suing me for half the house, saying I was reckless with our money, and she's even trying to say I'm the one who's been unfaithful. It's a classic move, twisting everything around so she can save face and get what she wants. The worst part, I know she's doing all this to cover her own ass, but it still hurts. It's like I lost everything, my trust, my marriage, the person I thought I knew. And the thing is, I don't even know how to start healing from this. I just know that I'll never see her the same way again. After discovering everything, I felt like I'd been hit by a freight train. The initial shock gave way to pure rage. How could she have done this to me? To us? I'd always thought Lisa was a bit bitchy, but I never imagined she was capable of this kind of deception. The betrayal cut so deep I couldn't even sleep some nights. I kept replaying every moment, her secret phone calls, her avoiding eye contact, the way she'd get defensive whenever I asked about money or her whereabouts. I started digging into her phone records, her emails, anything I could find. That's when I noticed the pattern. She'd been texting Mark constantly, especially late at night. The texts weren't just friendly, they were flirty, explicit even. I saw messages about meeting up, secrets, and how much she missed him. The worst part was the kind of sex talk she'd been fantasizing about him, talking about how hot he was, how she couldn't wait to see him again. I felt sick just reading it. It was like my wife had been hiding a whole other life from me and I'd been completely blind to it. The day I found the texts was the day I finally confronted her again. I was furious, trembling with anger. I threw her phone on the bed and told her I knew everything about the money, the affair, the lies. She looked at me with that bitchy, dismissive smirk, trying to act like I was overreacting. She said I was crazy, that I was imagining things, that Mark was just a friend helping her with some work stuff. She lied so effortlessly it was infuriating. She insisted that I was jealous and insecure, that I was just paranoid because I didn't trust her. But I wasn't stupid anymore. I had all the proof I needed. Her reaction was classic Lisa, bitchy, defensive, and completely unapologetic. She told me I was overreacting, that I was trying to ruin her life, and that I should get a grip. She said she loved me, but she needed her freedom, her own life. And Mark was just someone she confided in. Yeah, right, I knew better. I could see through her bullshit now. She was lying about everything, using her words like weapons. I felt a mixture of sadness and anger, sad because I'd trusted her, and angry because she'd betrayed me so completely. I couldn't believe I'd been so naive. For years, I'd been working my ass off to build a future for us, only to find out she was secretly draining our accounts to fund her affair. I looked at her and realized she'd been manipulating me from the start. She'd always been bitchy when she felt cornered, and now she was trying to gaslight me into thinking I was the crazy one. I knew I had to take action, but I was unsure what exactly I should do. Part of me wanted to yell, to scream, to throw her out right then and there. But I knew I needed a plan. In the days that followed, I started gathering evidence, screenshots of the texts, bank statements, anything I could use if I decided to fight her in court. I also started talking to a lawyer. The financial side was complicated because she was trying to claim half the house, even though I had paid for most of it myself, with the inheritance and my own savings. That made me furious, knowing she was trying to steal what I worked for. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about justice, about making her pay for what she'd done. The emotional toll was heavy. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and angry all at once. I couldn't believe she'd been so bitchy, so manipulative, so utterly ruthless in her lies. But I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I realized I couldn't keep living in denial, pretending everything was okay. I had to face the truth head-on, no matter how painful it was. Deep down, I knew this was the end of our marriage. I couldn't trust her anymore, not after all this. I felt like I was losing myself in the process, but I also knew I had to stand up for myself. I wasn't going to let her walk all over me anymore. One thing that struck me during all this was how she kept insisting she loved me, that she was sorry, but her actions proved otherwise. Every lie, every secret, every dollar she took, those weren't signs of love. They were signs of a woman who had completely checked out of the marriage long before I even knew. I started to see her as just another manipulative, bitchy person who was only interested in her own selfish needs. The more evidence I gathered, the more I realized I had to get out of this mess, for my own sanity and future. I decided to serve her divorce papers. I couldn't keep living with the constant suspicion, the lies, and the betrayal. I knew I had to cut ties and rebuild my life. It wasn't going to be easy. Her legal threats, her accusations, her playing the victim, it was all part of her game. But I was done being played. I was tired of her bitchy attitude and her manipulations. I wanted out, and I wanted her to face the consequences of her actions. Now I'm just trying to pick up the pieces. I still feel angry, hurt, and betrayed, but I also feel a strange sense of relief. This chapter is closing, and I know I'll be better off without her. Still, the scars of her deception will stay with me for a long time. I hope sharing this helps someone else see the signs before it's too late. Trust is everything, and when it's gone, it's almost impossible to get back. Be careful who you marry, because some people will burn you without a second thought. After I filed for divorce, everything seemed to accelerate at once. Lisa's bitchy attitude turned into outright hostility. She refused to accept the reality that her lies and manipulations were catching up with her. Instead, she doubled down, trying to twist every situation into my fault. She'd cry, accuse me of being paranoid, and even claim I was the one cheating, just to muddy the waters and distract from her own betrayal. It was infuriating. She'd sit there with that bitchy smirk, insisting she was the victim, that I was just jealous of her friendship with Mark. Honestly, it made my blood boil every time she spun her lies. Meanwhile, the legal battle was heating up. I hired a lawyer who helped me gather all the evidence I needed. I had the bank statements, the texts, the emails. Everything pointed to her embezzling money and lying about her affair. I also discovered that she'd been secretly transferring money into multiple accounts, possibly to hide her tracks. It was clear she was trying to cover her ass, but I had enough to prove her guilt. Her lawyer kept trying to spin things, claiming I was the one cheating or that I was unstable, but I had the proof. Every time she accused me of being the cheater, I'd just smile and show her the texts and bank records. That really ticked her off. One day she showed up at my office, bitchy as ever, demanding to know what I was doing with the lawyers. She yelled at me in front of everyone, saying I was ruining her reputation. I just looked at her and said, "You've already ruined ours. I have proof of everything. You can't lie your way out of this." That was the first time she looked genuinely rattled. She knew I wasn't going to back down. I'd caught her in her lies, and I had the evidence to back it up. That day, I realized she was losing control, and she hated it. In the meantime, I started to feel a strange sense of relief. Yeah, I was still angry and hurt, but I was also finally free of her manipulations. I didn't have to keep pretending everything was okay. I was finally taking control of my life. But the emotional scars lingered. Every time I saw her bitchy face or heard her deny everything, I felt the sting of betrayal all over again. I kept asking myself how I'd missed all the signs, how I'd been so blind. It was a lot to process, and honestly, some nights I'd lie awake just thinking about everything she'd done. The most frustrating part was her constant lying. She'd lie about where she was, who she was with, what she was doing. And when I'd confront her, she'd just deny everything, even when I had proof. That bitchy attitude of hers made it hard to get through her defenses. She'd act innocent, then turn around and accuse me of cheating or being unfaithful. It was a classic Lisa move, twist everything around so she could win. But I wasn't falling for it anymore. I'd learned her game. I had the evidence, and I was ready to fight her in court. One day she tried to get me to settle out of court. She sat me down, looking all bitchy and manipulative, and said she'd drop the lawsuit if I just gave her half the house. I couldn't believe her audacity. I paid for that house with my inheritance, my savings, and years of hard work. She had no right to it. I told her to get lost, that I wasn't giving her anything. That's when she got even bitchier, accusing me of being the one who was greedy and selfish. But I knew better. I knew she was just trying to get her hands on what she didn't deserve. As the weeks went by, I started making plans. I wasn't just going to sit around and let her manipulate her way into my life again. I wanted to protect my assets, my sanity, and my future. I installed security cameras, changed all my passwords, and started documenting everything. I was determined not to let her get away with her schemes. The more she pushed, the more I realized I had to stand my ground. I wasn't going to be the fool anymore. I was done being the victim of her bitchy, manipulative games. The emotional toll was heavy. I felt exhausted, betrayed, and betrayed again. I'd trusted her, loved her, and she turned out to be someone I didn't recognize. But underneath all that anger was a strange sense of clarity. I knew I had to get out of this mess, not just legally but emotionally. I was learning to detach, to see her for what she really was, a woman who would do anything for her own selfish gain. That realization was bitter, but it also gave me strength. I knew I couldn't keep living in her shadow, waiting for her to change. I had to take control and move on. Now I'm in a place where I can finally breathe. The divorce is moving forward and I've started to rebuild my life. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I know I'll be better off without her bitchy manipulations. Every day is a small victory, even if I still feel the sting of betrayal. I've learned a lot through this nightmare, about trust, about the importance of paying attention, and about how some people will burn you for their own selfish reasons. If there's one thing I want others to take away from this, it's that you can't ignore the signs. If something feels off, dig deeper, because once the betrayal hits, it's hard to come back from it. The legal process dragged on longer than I expected, but I was determined to see it through. Every day, I felt like I was walking a tightrope, balancing my anger, my pain, and my resolve to not let her manipulate me anymore. Lisa's bitchy attitude didn't soften. If anything, she became more aggressive, more accusatory. She'd show up at court dates, looking bitchy and dismissive, throwing tantrums when things didn't go her way. She insisted she was the victim, that I was the one lying and cheating. Her lawyer played the same game, trying to muddy the waters, claiming I'd been unfaithful, that I'd mishandled the money. But I had the evidence, screenshots, bank statements, her own texts, and I wasn't about to let her spin her web of lies. One thing I noticed was how her attitude shifted when she realized I was serious. She'd been so bitchy, so manipulative, but now she started to crack under the pressure. She'd lash out, call me names, accuse me of ruining her life. But deep down, I could see her losing her composure. She's good at pretending to be the victim, but I knew her game. She was desperate to keep what she was stealing, to keep her affair hidden, and to avoid the consequences of her actions. That realization made me even more determined to see this through. I also started to see how her bitchy attitude was a defense mechanism. She's always been a woman who can be bitchy when she feels threatened, and she was feeling threatened now, by the truth, by the legal process, by losing control. I couldn't help but feel a mix of pity and disgust. Pity because she was so desperate to hold on to her lies, and disgust because I knew she'd lied to me for years. Every bitchy comment, every snarky remark was just her way of trying to keep me at bay, keep me from exposing her fully. But it wasn't going to work anymore. Meanwhile, I kept my focus on protecting what I had left. I hired a forensic accountant to go through the financial mess she'd created. Turns out she'd been funneling money into multiple accounts, probably to hide her embezzling. I also got a court order to freeze her assets, which she hated. Her bitchy attitude turned even more sour when she realized I was serious about fighting her for the house. She kept claiming she deserved half of everything because I was reckless with the money, but I knew better. I paid for that house with my inheritance and my savings. She contributed nothing but her lies and manipulations. One day she showed up at my place unannounced, bitchy as ever, demanding to talk. She was furious, accusing me of trying to take everything from her, and she looked like she was about to blow a gasket. I just stood there, calm but firm. I told her she was done manipulating me, that I had all the proof I needed, and that I wasn't going to let her steal what I worked for. Her bitchy face twisted into a sneer, and she spat that I was heartless, that I was trying to destroy her. I didn't even bother responding. I knew her game now. She was just trying to get under my skin, but I wasn't going to let her. The court dates kept coming, and each time her bitchy attitude was on full display. She'd try to guilt trip the judge, cry crocodile tears, or throw tantrums if she didn't get her way. But I stayed quiet, letting the evidence speak for itself. I knew once the judge saw all the proof of her embezzlement and her affair, she wouldn't stand a chance. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. Every bitchy remark she made, every sneer, felt like a punch in the gut. How could someone I loved turn into this manipulative, vindictive person? Throughout it all, I struggled with a mix of anger and sadness. Part of me wanted to lash out, to call her out on her lies, to tell her exactly what I thought of her bitchy attitude. But I knew that wouldn't help. I had to keep my cool, stay focused, and let the law do its job. I also started to realize how much her bitchiness was just a shield, a way to hide her guilt and her fear of losing everything. That made me even more determined to see this through. I wasn't going to let her manipulate her way out of her consequences. Looking back, I see how her bitchy attitude was a defense mechanism, but it was also her downfall. Her constant scheming, her lies, and her manipulations only made her look worse in court. I think she underestimated how serious I was about fighting back. I had all the evidence, and I was ready to take her down. I felt a strange sense of satisfaction knowing I was finally in control of my own life again, free from her bitchy, manipulative grip. But I also felt a lingering sadness, because deep down, I still mourned the woman I thought I knew. That woman was gone, replaced by someone who would do anything to protect her own selfish interests, and I was just trying to survive the fallout. The final court hearing was the most intense moment of all. Lisa showed up, looking more bitchy than ever, her eyes flashing with that familiar sneer. She sat there, crossing her arms, trying to look like she owned the room. Her lawyer was whispering furiously, probably trying to come up with some last-minute spin to save her. But I had everything lined up. The bank statements, her texts, the forensic accountant's report, all of it pointed straight at her. I felt the weight of months of betrayal and deception pressing down on me, but I also felt a strange sense of relief. It was almost over. The judge listened carefully as my lawyer presented the evidence. I could see Lisa's bitchy attitude falter when she realized she was cornered. She tried to argue, to throw in some last-minute insults, but it was clear her lies had been exposed. When the judge finally spoke, he ruled in my favor, awarding me full control of the house and ordering Lisa to pay back the embezzled funds plus damages. It was a hard-fought victory, but it felt like justice. Still, I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of loss, loss of trust, of love, of what I thought was a life shared with someone I knew. As she was leaving the courtroom, Lisa shot me a bitchy glare, her face contorted with fury. She tried to say something, but the judge cut her off. Her lawyer was quietly packing up her papers, probably realizing she had no more tricks up her sleeve. I stayed behind, feeling exhausted but victorious. The weight of everything she'd done finally felt like it was lifting, even if I knew the scars would stay with me for a long time. In the days that followed, I started to piece my life back together. I moved out of the house, leaving behind the memories of her bitchy manipulations. I changed all my passwords, installed security cameras, and made sure I had control over my finances. I also started therapy to deal with the emotional fallout, because even with the legal victory, I was still hurting. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and angry. But I also knew I was better off without her bitchy attitude poisoning everything. Looking back, I realize how much her manipulations and her bitchy attitude were a defense, her way of hiding her guilt and her fear of losing everything. That realization made me think about how many people hide behind a tough exterior when they're really just scared. But I also learned a hard lesson. Trust is fragile, and some people will burn you for their own selfish reasons. If I could give anyone advice from all this, it's to pay attention. Don't ignore the signs. If someone's acting bitchy or secretive, dig deeper. Because once the betrayal hits, it's almost impossible to go back. Now I'm finally starting to rebuild my life. I've been focusing on myself, working out, reconnecting with friends, and trying to find happiness again. It's not easy, but I know I'm better off without her manipulative, bitchy attitude poisoning my world. I hope my story serves as a warning. Be careful who you trust. Protect your assets and don't dismiss the little signs. Because once someone crosses that line into betrayal, it changes everything. And sometimes, the only way to survive is to fight back hard, take control, and walk away. Looking back now, I realize how much I was blind for so long. I loved her, trusted her, and somehow convinced myself that all the little signs of her bitchy, manipulative side were just quirks or misunderstandings. But the truth is, she was always hiding something, something dark, something selfish. Finding out about her affair with Mark and her embezzling money was like a lightning strike that shattered everything I thought I knew about us. It's a lesson I won't forget. Never ignore the red flags, no matter how much you want things to be perfect. The whole experience changed me. I've become more cautious, more guarded. I don't trust easily anymore, and I certainly don't take anything for granted. The betrayal has left scars, but it's also made me stronger. I learned that some people are just selfish, manipulative, and willing to lie, cheat, and steal to get what they want. It's not just about the money or the affair. It's about the fundamental respect that was missing from our relationship. Once that trust is broken, it's almost impossible to repair, and trying to do so only leads to more pain. I often think about how her bitchy attitude was a shield, her way of hiding her guilt and her fears. She played the victim so well, crying crocodile tears and throwing tantrums, trying to make me look like the bad guy. But I see through her now. I see her for what she really was, a woman who used her manipulative charm to deceive everyone around her, including me. That realization gives me a strange sense of closure, knowing I finally uncovered the truth and fought for what's right. Most importantly, I've learned to prioritize myself. I've started rebuilding my life from scratch, focusing on my career, my friends, and my own happiness. The house, the money, the marriage, all of it was a false illusion. Now I know what's real, and I know what I deserve. I don't need someone like her dragging me down or manipulating me anymore. I've finally accepted that some people are just wired differently, selfish and dishonest, and that walking away is sometimes the only way to save yourself. To anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, I'll say this: trust your instincts. Don't ignore the bitchy attitude, the secretive behavior, or the little lies. Because once the betrayal hits, it's like a storm that destroys everything in its path. But remember, you have the power to fight back. Stand your ground, gather your evidence, and don't let anyone manipulate or lie their way out of the consequences. Protect yourself, your heart, your assets, your sanity. In the end, I feel a strange mix of relief and sadness. Relief that I finally took control, and sadness for what I lost: years of trust, a shared life, the person I thought I knew. But I also feel hope. Hope for a future where I don't have to live with her bitchy, manipulative shadow hanging over me. I've learned the hard way that betrayal is one of the deepest wounds, but it's also an awakening. Sometimes, you have to lose everything to truly find yourself again. And that's exactly what I intend to do.